Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Phillip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Phillip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. Jen Rezac here alongside Phillip Statler. You know, you have heard Phillip here on the radio. You've seen him around town. You might even have a friend or acquaintance, somebody who works with Phillip at Statler Financial Services. But how much do you really know about him? Well, no better time than the present to go ahead and get to know you a little bit better, Phillip. We're going to do some of that background kind of stuff here, especially for some of our newer listeners who are maybe catching you for the first time, don't know you all that well. Always a good time to get to know you a little bit better. But Phillip, welcome back. I hope you're doing great this week.
Hey, doing well today, Jen, and it's good to be in the studio. And it's always nice to do this type of segment where we do get to kind of share who we are, where we came from, and what's really happening around here.
Right. And it's valuable to know a little bit more about your background, your history, and it kind of gives us some insight as to where you're coming from when it comes to your philosophy and how you handle things with people in their retirements. So, Phillip, tell us a little bit about your background. You know, how did you get started in the finance industry?
Well, you know, it really goes way back. So when I was in college, I got my degree in both accounting and finance. And I got to tell you, Jen, I was intrigued with finance. I mean, the investment side, the options, it was just, I liked it. However, now let's think back, right? I graduated in 1984 from college. Mm-hmm. So that was, it's hard to believe that was a long time ago. But back then, if you wanted to work in the financial services business, you went to work for one of the big wirehouses, one of the big New York firms, and you got paid on commission. Now I like it, but I'm not a salesperson, Jen.
Yeah, not you.
You know, I'm just not. And so I defaulted to the accounting side and tax side. So that's what I did for a long time out of college. I worked for a CPA firm for a couple of years. Then in Tallahassee, I launched my own accounting firm there. But think back, my daughter was born, and all of my family was here in Sebring. My in-laws, my wife's brothers, my brother and sister, my parents, everybody was here. When the first grandchild was born, it was time to move back home. And so I got back into accounting in the early 90s. And about the mid to late 90s, you know, I started noticing there were some things that I felt like I could help folks with that wasn't getting done. You know, as a tax professional, I would send folks that, hey, look, you need an IRA, you need to set up a SEP or some retirement account. Go down the road to one of those wirehouse guys and one of those brokerage firms, and they can help you. Mm-hmm. And then I wouldn't see them again until the next year. And what I found was they really weren't doing the best for my client. They were finding out they were in limited partnerships or they were in variable annuities, and they were in things that were expensive to my client. You know, good for the brokerage firms, but not good for my clients. And so that's when I really decided, hey, I can do a better job than what I see happening from these firms. And so that's when I got into the financial services firm way back when I still had an accounting practice. And, you know, you fast forward that to now, and we've come a long way. In 2001, we really switched gears. In 2001, I left the accounting industry pretty much behind and became a financial advisor and really on the independent brokerage side. 2006, I got tired of all the brokers. Even independent brokerage firms would say, hey, look, sell this, sell that, you know, push this product, push that product, even on the independent side. And I know it's way worse than that in the other side of the business. So in 2006, we became totally independent. We became Statler Financial Services became a registered investment advisory firm. And so that meant we were totally independent. And, you know, I think that was the best move I ever made, Jen.
Yeah. And just talk a little bit more about that, what that means for people that you're working with, for you to be independent, I just want people to really understand what exactly that means, because there's all sorts of financial professionals out there, and we don't always know what's for sure going on behind the scenes and what that means for us at the end of the day.
So what that means truly is that nobody is telling us what to sell, how to sell, what products to push, what investments to push. We truly are independent. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients to do what's in their best interest, which is different than the brokerage, side of the business. They just have to put you in stuff that's good for you, that should be good for you, that you're suitable for. Where we really have to look at the whole picture and determine what the best thing is for you moving forward, especially with dealing with retirement planning. We do a lot of income planning. That's probably one of the main things we do here at Statler Financial. And that's a big part, is having that written retirement income plan.
Right. And I'll just go ahead and use this opportunity to give the phone number for people who are interested in that written retirement income plan. You think about somebody who has a background like Phillip, where started out really knowing what's going on with accounting and taxes. That's certainly a part of what's going on with your income plan. 863-285-3815 is the number to call to reach Statler Financial Services in Sebring. That's 863-285-3815. Now, Phillip, you said, your interest in finance, you were like this when you were in college. But what got you there to wanting to study that in college? Who did you learn some of those early lessons from? Maybe some of those things that shaped you earlier on in your childhood?
I go back to growing up here in Sebring, and I wasn't born here, but I grew up here. I lived in Highlands County since I was about 8 years old. And so one of the things is that my mom, who was an excellent seamstress, would make my school clothes. Now, imagine that, in middle school, I'm sitting there and my clothes don't look like anybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're quality made clothes. They do the job. So I learned early on, if I wanted to fit in with everybody else and have nice clothes that I saw at school, the stuff that they were wearing, the cool stuff, I had to work for it.
Yeah.
My parents were going to go out and buy me school clothes that I didn't need. And so I started early on. My brother and I started mowing lawns around the neighborhood and even outside of our neighborhood. My dad would load our mower up on a trailer and cart us to where we need to go for a day. And so that was my first experience of, hey, look, if you want something, you got to go out and work for it. And nothing's free in this world. And that way you can spend that money the way you want to.
Right.
And so that was a big deal for us. And it kept going even in high school. I mean, I started at the age of 15 working in retail. I started working at a young age and never really quit.
Right. And here's the thing. You help people who probably were raised with a very similar mindset, knowing how hard you have to work to build up what you have. And now what you do is help those people who were probably raised just like you, knowing the value of a dollar and wanting to make sure that they made those good decisions. Now you help them protect it. And that's what your process is really all about when you're helping people design these financial plans. They know how to do a good job, Phillip, working for what they've saved and saving and building up. They know how to do that part. Let's talk about what you help them with in terms of going forward with that retirement planning process.
Absolutely, Jen. And I'm really proud of this because we spent a lot of time and effort in really and truly creating our process. And so we developed a trademark system that we call the Core Retirement Design. Because here's the deal, Jen. At the core, the health and sustainability of your retirement income really and truly depends on minimizing two things: minimizing portfolio risk and minimizing costs. Mm-hmm. And so we look at that core as the C really stands for calculate. You got to calculate what your personal risk preference is. How much risk are you willing to take? How much risk can you afford to take? Two different things that we need to look at there. The O really stands for organize. You got to organize your goals and objectives for retirement, which is different than when you were working and trying to put away money to grow it for retirement. Now we're looking at, how am I going to get it out? What are my distributions going to look like? How am I going to create that income I need? Then we go down to R for review, right? We want to review that risk and cost analysis of your current portfolio to make sure it matches with what you have. And then the last is that E for establish your optimized risk matched portfolio so that we're matching your risk to a portfolio. That's important. So we like that process. It's served our clients well throughout the years, going through two major bear markets in the last, 21 years. That's been a good process. And we finally have been able to put some things on paper and say, hey, look, this is it. This is our stick in the sand. This is what we're going to build everything based upon because we want everybody to have the retirement they always dreamed of. And the core retirement design allows that to happen, Jen.
Let's talk a little bit about how we get started on that, because I bet there's a lot of people who they have done a good job with the saving. They think maybe they have a plan, but as you're describing what this is like, they're saying, you know what? I don't know if I really have something that that matches what's going on here with the core retirement design.
Absolutely, Jen. So it's easy. We're a phone call away from sitting down with folks, and that's really the key, is sitting down with folks, getting to know them, and calculating out a couple things. Well, one, how far are they out from retirement? Because maybe they're closer than what they think to retirement, and they may need help sooner than we anticipate. So we walk through this very simple core retirement design to help them figure out what their risk looks like, develop their goals, and then put together that portfolio that's going to match up everything, the risk along with the investment side, to make sure that we've got everything covered when it comes to planning out your retirement. Because ultimately, we want to have that retirement income plan, a written retirement income plan, not just in your head. We want it written so everybody knows what it is and can follow through on what has to be done. To start that process, give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. I look forward to seeing you soon here at Statler Financial.
That number one more time, 863-285-3815. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
This is your captain speaking. We're expecting fair skies, a smooth flight, and about a 85% chance or so of making it to our destination. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight.
Would you stay on that plane? Of course not. Well, do you have a retirement plan where you probably won't run out of money? You need a plan that no matter the destination will help you get to and through retirement successfully. Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services can design a plan to help you get to your destination as comfortably as possible, even if Wall Street or the economy causes some turbulence. Call Phillip Statler and the Statler Financial Services team to start working on your plan. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Get a plan designed to allow you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the retirement you've worked so hard for. 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services, advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here alongside Phillip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. StatlerFinancial.com is where you can check him out online. He's also on social media if you just search for Statler Financial Services on Facebook. Always lots of great posts that he has available there. Going to be talking a little bit about inflation here in this part of the show. And Phillip, remember when you were a kid and you'd buy a bag of chips and you'd open it up and chips all the way to the top of the bag, right? Or cereal or anything. It just seemed like the whole thing was full. Think about the last time you bought a bag of chips. And for me, it's tortilla chips. I know I don't need the cholesterol. I know I need to back off a little bit. It's my vice. But I open up the bag and air, like a third of the bag is air. That's all I'm seeing here. I am up to my elbow to get the first chip. And you're thinking, why so much air? What happened to all the chips? That's kind of like what inflation can do to your savings over your lifetime. You keep spending more money, but we're not getting more chips, Phillip. We're getting more air for our money, right?
Yeah, we are. We're definitely getting more air.
Oh, man. So how can that impact our lifestyle when it comes to retirement?
Well, I think that, that means that it takes more chips to fill the bag now, right? So it's the same thing. As inflation creeps up, it takes more money to buy the same amount of stuff. And so we lose purchasing power, which is no fun, right? If you think back, and a good example of this, and the way to think about it is, think back to when you were a kid. What'd you pay for a piece of bubble gum? What'd you pay for a package of gum? And what does it cost today? What did that pop cost you? What did Coca-Cola cost you? And what does it cost today? That's the same thing. That's inflation, folks. Mm-hmm. That is inflation, pure and simple. And so think about you're retiring today, 30 years from now, what is that Coca-Cola going to cost you?
Right.
What's that hamburger going to cost you? That is inflation. And so it robs you of your purchasing power, and it takes more money to buy the same things is the simple way of putting it.
Right. And really, we're practically trained to not notice inflation much during our working years. That's why we want to make sure we talk about this, because you have raises, you have bonuses, and it counter affects what's going on then, right? So we don't always think a lot about inflation unless it's in our faces with a news headline or something. So how do we factor this in to our spending plans for retirement, Phillip? When you're talking about going out to eat and food and candy and things like that, all of that's going to cost more in retirement. How do you factor that into your spending plan?
Well, we have to factor in an inflation factor, right? And so the question becomes, what do you use? What is inflation really going to be? I can't say I'm going to take out, $1,000 a month for the next 30 years and be okay, because it's not going to work. If I have the same expenses, at some point, I'm going to have to take out 1.5% more next year or 2% more next year. And the problem is that doesn't sound like a lot of money, because that first year it's not. But now the second year, if I add another 1.5% or 2%, another 1.5% or 2%, well, in 5 years,
it
now
starts to add up,
that's 10% more than what I started at. And so it's being realistic about what our needs are and factoring in inflation. And that means that the income from the income plan that we put together has to continually be rising in order to help keep up with those inflations. We can't just mark time, take the same amount out, and it mean the same thing today as it will 30 years from now.
Okay, so let's talk about that when you talk about making sure that your income keeps rising somehow. Are there income sources that are inflation proof? Is there a way to make all of our income inflation proof?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's building the right plan. I mean, there are products out there. So there are annuities that have some income riders that you can get what they call increasing income, so that when the market goes up, you're going to get a raise every year that it does. But it's an annuity. So does it work for everybody? No, because there's timing issues, there's liquidity issues. You might have to hold it for 7 or 10 years. The income rider, how does it work? Do we have to pay for it? So there's all kinds of things when we talk about annuities as to whether it's right for you. And a lot of times it's not the right fit for people. We have to make sure that we're using the right tool in the right place to accomplish the plan that we're trying to put together. So we look a lot of times at 5-year increments. So let's start now. 5 years from now, we'll take a big bump. 5 years from now, we'll take another big bump. And that helps us within our retirement income plan to help offset that inflationary periods. So folks, that's why I feel it's so important that we have a retirement income plan in place. It just gives you that peace of mind of knowing that I've got the income that will get me through retirement. And if you don't have one of those and you are 5 years out from retirement, or you've already retired, it's never too late. Give us a call and let's put one together for you. The number to call is 863-285-3815. Again, it's 863-285-3815. Give us a call. Let us put together a retirement income plan for you.
That number one more time is 863-285-3815. Historically, as we talk about inflation, the average inflation rate has been around 3%. As we were talking a few moments ago, it's easy to think that doesn't sound like much. It isn't much to fuss about, but you have to apply the years here. Even with low inflation, the cost of everything doubles every 20 years or so. And Phillip, think about that. If you're retired for 40 years, everything's going to double twice. So that's a lot to think about. How do we get the right growth in here to address the possibility of inflation later on in retirement?
Well, first, let me say this, Jen, is that 3%, that number we've all forgotten, right? Mm-hmm. So because the last 10 years, we've been lulled into this low inflationary period of time. Right. Where inflation has been maybe 1.5%, 1.75%. And the Fed has been challenged to get it to 2%. They've struggled to do that. And so in our minds, we don't see that, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. It's been 10 years that we haven't had it, but folks, it's going to come roaring back. And that's the problem. People are not going to be ready for that.
Right.
So how do we plan for that? Well, the first thing I will tell you is that you cannot afford to avoid the stock market, which for a lot of folks is hard. I mean, I sit down with a lot of folks that are risk averse. They don't want any risk with their retirement money. They want all safe. And the problem is that it takes some risk to keep up with inflation. Now, it has to be calculated risk. It has to be the right kind of risk. It means that we need to look at tactical portfolios versus buy and hold portfolios. It means that we have to have an income plan structured so that we don't have to worry about pulling money out of the stock market all the time, especially when it's down. So there's a lot that goes into that answer, Jen. And the first thing that comes to mind is, one, we need to have stock market exposure. And two, we need to have a retirement income plan that maybe doesn't have stock market exposure. So we blend those two things together to provide the income that folks really need.
Bank of America surveyed global investment managers on economic concerns not too long ago. 93% said they think inflation could be ramping up, and I know we've seen some different indicators here. What are you thinking, Phillip? What are some of the indicators that we could be seeing an increase in inflation over the next few years?
Well, I think that we are seeing stuff now that gives us reason for concern. Housing prices are escalating tremendously. Mm-hmm. Earlier we had corn prices at all-time highs. So we've seen a lot of commodity stuff increase in cost, as well as other things, right? We're having issues with vehicles, mm-hmm, used car prices are going sky high because we can't get chips for the new cars, so there's all kinds of extraordinary items right now that are really playing into inflation. I believe we're going to see inflation, and it's not going to be pretty because of some of the concerns and the issues we're dealing with right now. Now, will it be what the Fed wants? Will it be that hyperinflation? I don't think so. I mean, it may be a temporary hyperinflation just because of supply and demand issues we're seeing right now. I think ultimately we'll get back to that normal inflationary period between 2 and 3%, but it's going to feel like it's higher than that just because of some of the supply and demand issues that we're seeing right now. But it doesn't mean that we're going to be fine. That it doesn't mean we're not going to lose purchasing power, because we are. We're already seeing that today, is that folks are losing purchasing power. They can't get out of the grocery store for, 50% more than what they used to get out of the grocery store for.
Right.
And so that just leads me to tell you that that's why it's so much more important today that we have that retirement income plan. It also makes it that much more important that we have that risk analysis, because like I said, inflation, to keep up with inflation, we need some risk in our portfolio. And a lot of people have too much risk, but there's a group of folks, probably 30 or 40% of the folks I sit down with, they don't have enough risk in their portfolio. And I understand why, Jim, because they're fearful, right? They're afraid of market downturns. And that's why we do a complete risk analysis for folks to find out what their risk score is. And then we make sure that the portfolio kind of matches up with that, to give them that peace of mind that, hey, even though I'm going to have some ups and downs in the market, I know that the risk is within my risk number. If you don't know what your risk number is, and you don't know what the risk number is, your portfolio, and how they tie together, you really need to give us a call and let's walk through our financial x-ray. To do that, it's simple. It's a phone call, folks. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Or you can go to my website at statlerfinancial.com, and there's a link to my calendar right there. You can schedule your own appointment. Do it right now. Don't put it off any longer. 863-285-3815.
Retirees suffer the most from higher inflation. Coming up next, we'll take a look in the past to help inform ourselves of what we can do to ensure our retirement can bear the brunt of inflation. Stay with us.
If you have a retirement plan and would like a second opinion, call Statler Financial Services today. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
From the pitch, swung at a little too soon.
Strike three, you're out.
To the joke told at the wrong time. To barely missing your connecting flight.
This is the final boarding call for Flight 109 to Chicago.
Timing is everything. The same is true for your Social Security benefits. Take them too soon and you could leave a lot of money on the table. Take them too late and you might spend down too much of your savings. Everybody's situation can be different, but taking your Social Security benefits at the right time is important for your retirement success. Phillip Statler at Statler Financial understands Social Security and can help you make decisions that are best for you and your retirement dreams. Call 863-285-3815 to start optimizing your benefits. With Social Security, timing is everything, so don't delay. Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial today. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Our firm offers insurance services and is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here alongside Phillip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. StatlerFinancial.com is the website if you want to connect with him online. Again, that is StatlerFinancial.com to learn a little bit more. As we talk today about inflation, It's retirees who suffer the most from high inflation. Think back to the 70s. It was retirees living on a fixed income. Well, really everybody saw inflation rising to 20%, right? Which is just unbelievable. but it was retirees living on a fixed income who were becoming poorer and poorer as inflation increased. Phillip, obviously, those times of higher inflation were not fun for anybody, but for those who've lived through it and said, okay, well, I've dealt with this high inflation before, talk about what's different for them now, because if they're getting ready to retire now, they sure as heck weren't retiring back in the 70s when we saw that high inflation, right?
That's right. And high inflation affected the working folks too, right? I mean, our
for sure.
wages did not keep up with inflation, but the poor folks that are on fixed income, it was devastating to them because of all that. So, most folks don't remember what that hyperinflation was like, in the 70s and early 80s. So how do we do that? How do we keep up with that? Will we see that kind of inflation? I mean, I don't want to say we couldn't because nobody knows.
Right.
But in some areas, I guess you could say we kind of already have in some areas of the economy, right? So what do we do? People need to be very concerned about how it's going to impact their retirement. Again, it becomes purchasing power. What's going to let's break it down to the smallest thing. And that's, I'm going to go buy a loaf of bread. What's it going to cost me today versus what's it going to cost me in 10 years, right? So it's that whole purchasing power thing that is really concerning. And we don't want to not plan for that. I would rather plan for, higher inflation and not get it and have more money to spend than not plan for it and now get blindsided and now I don't have enough money to buy the groceries and the things I need.
Right. Well, and as you indicated, how we might see this a little bit higher in different sectors. Inflation for medical costs, for example, that is one of those areas that we tend to see it trending a little bit higher. It was around 6% in 2020. That's the last time that we had those full numbers ready there. How do you help people prepare for the skyrocketing cost of healthcare in retirement if it is going to keep increasing at a faster rate than everything else?
Well, I think that it's no different than anything else, right? Just because that inflation is going up a little faster than other things, it just means we need to be more focused on making sure a couple things. One is, obviously, it all points back to having the right income plan in place, but there's other things I think people can do, Jen, and that's making sure that they review their Medicare supplements, make sure that they're using the best possible, health insurance products that are going to reduce their overall cost. Don't look at something and say, okay, this is going to cost me more per month, but maybe it saves you over the long haul, right? Because it pays everything. You don't have to worry about anything else versus something that, another plan that costs less, but now I have higher deductibles or I have higher copays. So I think it's making sure that we're looking at these things on a regular basis, not just one time and set it and forget it. I mean, and then obviously the other part of that, Jen, is you got to have the income in place that's going to allow for those increases in our income to make sure that we can account for and live through those type of things. And that's why I think it's so important that folks have that income plan in place and they know how much risk they're taking in their portfolios, because those two things ultimately will decide whether or not you have enough money to live out the rest of your days. The risk part helps compensate for inflation. So if we have no risk in our portfolio, it's going to be hard to keep up with inflation. If we don't have an income plan in place, it's going to be hard to know whether we're going to have the right amount of income to get us through. All of that to say, you need to have a plan, and that plan needs to have a risk analysis. It needs to know what inflation is going to look like. We need to plan for inflation. We need to be conservative and not overly optimistic. If any of that resonates with you as to, well, that makes no sense to me, or how do I do that? Folks, that's what we're here for. Statler Financial, we're here to help you walk through that retirement lifestyle. Give us a call and let us help coach you through retirement. 863-285-3815. That number one more time, 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Phillip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. I'm Jen Rezac alongside. And Phillip, of course, as we talk about inflation and costs increasing, I don't know anybody who says, gosh, I look forward to cutting back when I get to retirement, or gosh, I look forward to pinching pennies and no longer splurging on anything. Nobody thinks that way. We want the same lifestyle in retirement. So if we're worried about inflation, how much do we need to save so we can keep living the lifestyle that we're accustomed to and that we want in retirement?
So, Jen, I'm going to say that's probably the wrong question, right?
Okay.
It's how much am I going to spend in retirement?
All right.
What does my spending look like? What does my budget look like in retirement? And then if inflation is there, what is inflation? Well, maybe I need to use 2.5% to be safe. Now, there's going to be years where maybe it's 1%, but there's going to be years it's going to be 3 or 4. And so we need to build into our retirement income plan inflation. And if we do that, and we've got if we've got a realistic spending number, including, right, going cruising, taking the trip to see the grandkids, all that, if all that's wrapped into our spending numbers and we're legit with those numbers, and then we apply a 2.5% inflation number year over year over year over year, and we can make that income plan work for you, then we should be good, right? We should be okay. We should feel comfortable. Now, I will tell you that means that we've got to have some risk within that portfolio. Not too much risk, but enough risk to make sure that it helps keep up with inflation. To me, that's the equation, is putting those things together to make sure that you're going to have enough income, looking at Social Security, looking at your portfolio, and determining what is a realistic amount you can take out over your lifetime.
Of course, inflation is just one piece of the retirement puzzle as well. What are some of the other risks to your money in retirement that we have to talk about and that we have to think about?
Well, I think that we have to talk about taxes. That's, I think, is probably going to be bigger than what most people believe, especially if you're not in the bottom tax bracket heading into retirement. Then that could be a lot bigger number than what any of us are feeling right now. Medical is an issue. Having too much risk in your portfolio can be devastating. I've seen it rob people of income when we saw 2008 happen because they had too much risk in their portfolio. And so, that's why I say it's a balancing act when it comes to the stock market and the risk you take and what kind of portfolios you use, because we need some risk, but we don't need too much risk. And so we need to balance those things out based on your risk number. And I think that becomes more and more important the older we get in retirement. So the risks we have is taxes, healthcare costs going up, stock market risk. The last one, Jen, is longevity. Mm-hmm. How long are you going to live?
Right.
Have you planned to live to 100? Every plan I put together, I'm looking. People can say, well, I'm not healthy. I don't think I'm going to live that long. You may not be, but we don't know when that time is that we're not going to be here anymore. The biggest example I have is a client come see me about 8 years ago. And he said, Phillip, income, I don't have to worry. If I'm here in 3 years, it's going to be a miracle. That was 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So we have to plan to live to 100, even if we don't. And I want to make sure that when I put together a retirement income plan, that it's going to do that. We're going to show that, hey, it'll last you to 100 and probably more if you're fortunate enough to live longer than that. But these are the things that are important. And these are the things that can be just as dangerous as inflation when it comes to your retirement planning for income. Listen, folks, if you don't have a retirement income plan in place, if you don't know how much you can afford to take out of your portfolio every year and it lasts you for the rest of your life, you need to come sit down with us and let's walk through our financial analysis and determine how much income you can realistically plan to take out of your portfolio. It's important. It gives you certainty. It gives you that level of knowing that I have enough income to last. Again, if you have at least $150,000, let us help you build a retirement income plan that will give you that peace of mind. Give us a call right now to schedule your financial x-ray. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
This is your captain speaking. We're expecting fair skies, a smooth flight, and about a 85% chance or so of making it to our destination. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight.
Would you stay on that plane? Of course not. Well, do you have a retirement plan where you probably won't run out of money? You need a plan that no matter the destination will help you get to and through retirement successfully. Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services can design a plan to help you get to your destination as comfortably as possible, even if Wall Street or the economy causes some turbulence. Call Phillip Statler and the Statler Financial Services team to start working on your plan. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Get a plan designed to allow you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the retirement you've worked so hard for. 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services, advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here with Phillip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. Phillip is the inaugural Highlander Award winner for Financial Representative of the Year. Check him out online at statlerfinancial.com. And of course, you can also get on social media, get on Facebook, do a search for Statler Financial Services, and they will pop right up. And Phillip, it's funny, you think about the world of finance, there are things that can have a positive impact on one set of people while negatively impacting somebody else at the same time. There's somebody benefiting from credit card debt, higher taxes, higher interest rates, and there's also somebody who's hurt by those things. So we're gonna go through some of these areas that are both good news and bad news, and how do we navigate them is what we're gonna do here in this last part of the show today. I want to start with an example from the lending world. And Phillip, I thought this was an interesting headline that I found from Wall Street Journal. Credit card debt keeps falling. So that is good news for everybody except the lenders, except for the credit card companies.
They don't like that at all, do they?
They don't. You're right.
You're right. That's a great example is that type of thing is good news for for our population, not so good for the banks and the credit card companies. And obviously that's great news. People are paying down their debt, which is tremendous. I mean, it's one thing we've been looking for a long time in this economy of ours. And so we look at that, but the companies that issue those cards, they rely on more people using them, carrying higher and higher balances, because that's where their revenue comes from, right? The credit card fees, the interest rates. So this could indicate a coming long-term trend, if you will, with how people are thinking about debt, which is good news.
Yeah.
That they're thinking about debt that way. However, it's bad news for those companies. Again, in 2020, credit card spending in the U.S. totaled some nearly $3.9 trillion on just general purpose and store cards, and that's down 9% from 2019 spending.
Huh.
Now you could say, well, is it the pandemic? Not necessarily, because I think more people shop from home, spent more money,
Right.
on the pandemic. But I think they were, a lot of them were smart with some of their stimulus money and use that money to pay down debt. The question is, will that continue
Right.
in 2021 and 2022? If it does, Jen, I think that will be good news for us here in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. How do you talk to clients about addressing things like that high interest debt before retirement? Because with debt, again, there's a difference between a mortgage and credit card debt. How do you talk to people about addressing some of that while they're still working?
That's a good question, because I do get that question a lot. Kind of the opposite effect, right? Should I pay off my house? And I know that's not the high interest rate debt, because going into retirement, I tell everybody, look, you need to be debt free, except for maybe your mortgage.
Okay.
And if you're paying 3.25%, maybe 3.5% or less, I wouldn't be in a hurry to pay my mortgage off, because typically you're going to be able to make more money on your investments than 3.5%. Now, if you just got it sitting at the bank, not the case. But if you truly have it invested in some kind of retirement income plan or investment plan, you should be earning on average better than 3.5%. So it doesn't make sense to pay off the house. It does make a lot of sense to pay off anything else that has a higher interest rate than that 3.5%.
Okay.
It just makes total sense. And the more out of debt you are heading into retirement, the better off you're going to be, the more comfortable you're going to be in that retirement lifestyle.
Yeah. It seems like it would be a good thing. It seems like it would be a really good thing. Here's another one. Low interest rates. We hear that referred to as a double-edged sword. It's good news for borrowers. If you are taking on that mortgage, if you are at a stage of life when you are borrowing money, you love low interest rates. It's bad news for savers, though, for people who are wanting to earn something off of that in retirement. Talk about how that works.
Well, you're right. I mean, so much. I mean, we're so thankful right now that mortgage rates are so low, and interest rates seem to be very low, even on car loans, and even credit card rates have gone down a little bit just because interest rates as a factor. But it is a double-edged sword, because the poor folks that are thinking about retirement, they have their money in savings making zero.
Making nothing, right?
Virtually nothing. It is nothing when you take into consideration taxes and inflation, right?
Right.
So I spoke with somebody the other day, and they had a CD renewing, and they were antsy. Phil, we got to do something. We got to do something. It was a 5-year. We really did well the last 5 years. We were getting 3.25%. But the renewal rate is for 5 years is I think it's going to be 0.5 or 0.75%. And that you can't get ahead if that's all you're making on your money at the bank. And so, it's good for those people that have to borrow money, but people that need to live off their interest rates, it hasn't been good for them it seems like forever, Jen. It's been a long time since we've seen decent interest rates.
Mm-hmm. So how do you help retirees navigate those lower interest rates in retirement? When you're at that phase of life where this is affecting you, how do you help people deal with this?
Well, I think that we look at a couple things. One is that most people, they have their money at the bank because they want something safe and secure. The issue is that most of those type people actually need a little bit of risk in their portfolios. And they just don't realize it, or they're so risk averse, they're not willing to take the chance. But it is, even somebody that's 90 years old, a lot of times we'll sit down with them and they'll have a little bit of money in the market, not a lot, but still they need a little bit of that exposure to help keep up with inflation. So you say, Phil, but what do you do to get safety? Well, there are things out there that will give you some principal protection and give you some decent earnings over the lifetime. And we use annuities for that. A lot of times index annuities will give us the ability to know that their principal is protected. They're not going to be affected by market risk, but yet they're going to get a better rate of return than what they're getting on their savings in the bank. So that's an area a tool. That's one of the tools we use. Is it the only tool? No, but it is a tool that will get us safety and a better return than what they see at the bank, Jen.
Here's another area that I want to talk about here. This is one that I noticed, especially in my former days as a reporter. Let's talk about taxes, because we hear a lot of times when those monthly reports come in about what state tax revenues were or what federal tax revenues were or whatever, it's presented in this light that it's good news that tax revenues came in at a higher level. And it is good news for the government entity that gets to spend it. But then when we look at the other side, that money came from taxpayers who don't get to spend that money themselves anymore. So that's the other side of this coin. We know that paying taxes are part of life, but talk about the impact that can have on our retirement savings.
Yeah, that money's coming from you and me and everybody else out here.
Right, exactly.
So it's and that's the issue, is that folks forget that their IRAs are taxable when they take it out. Their 401ks, they're going to have to pay tax on that when they take it out. They don't own it 100% free and clear. Mm-hmm. There's a mortgage on that tax deferred money. And the problem is we don't know how much the other party owns of our retirement account because it depends on what tax bracket you're in.
Wow. Yeah.
And as taxes go up, guess what? That percentage goes up. So if you're in a 22% tax bracket and you take money out of your 401k or your IRA, Uncle Sam's going to get at least 22% of it, maybe more, because it may push you into a higher tax bracket, or it may make your Social Security taxable. So it could be a higher number than that. People forget about taxes, and it's one of the areas that folks really need to realize that it plays a big role. And not like inflation. Inflation we call the silent killer, but taxes are forgotten and until it's too late a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Phillip, how do you help somebody create a plan where they don't outlive their money if they do end up living a long time?
It starts with finding out what they need in terms of monthly income. And we build that by taking what their budget is today. We apply some inflationary numbers. We don't know what inflation is going to be, but we have to plan for something, and we do. We put inflation numbers in there. It says, hey, look, we're having inflation. We need to build this out so that you get periodic raises in your income from now to age 100. And so we look at putting together those buckets and making sure that we are going to put together a plan that is conservative enough to get you through retirement the rest of your life, but objective enough to give you enough income to live off of. So folks, listen, when you look at your retirement, a written retirement income plan is key part of that planning process. If you don't have a written retirement income plan, and 90 to 95% of the folks out there don't, give us a call and let us help walk you through that process to determine what your retirement could look like given your account balances right now. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
You've been listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. Be sure to tune in again next week for more insights from Phillip. I'm Jen Rizak. Glad you spent some time with us here today. We hope you have a great week.
Call Phillip Statler today to get started on your complimentary financial X-ray report. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is a paid placement.